Tomorrow, Mercury Retrograde begins. February 26th is not just another date on the calendar. It marks a shift in rhythm, a shift in how we think, speak, decide, and respond. And whether you follow astrology closely or not, you may feel it. Not as something dramatic falling from the sky, but as something subtle moving beneath your thoughts. A pause, a hesitation, a second look at what you were so sure about yesterday. When Mercury, the planet that governs communication, perception, logic, travel, technology, and decision-making, appears to move backward in the sky, the external world often mirrors that internal reversal. Emails get misunderstood. Conversations feel slightly off. Plans change. Delays happen. But here's what most people misunderstand. Retrograde does not create chaos. It reveals where chaos already exists. And the first 24 hours? That's when the shift feels strongest. February 26th may feel mentally crowded. You might wake up with racing thoughts, or you may feel unusually quiet, like something is recalibrating in the background. That strange in-between sensation, where nothing is wrong, but nothing feels entirely steady either. That's the doorway opening. That's awareness sharpening. People often label Mercury retrograde as a period of confusion, but confusion is simply clarity assembling itself in a new pattern. Think about rearranging a room. Everything has to be taken down before it finds a better place. It looks messy before it becomes organized. Tomorrow may feel like that moment when everything is off the shelves. You might revisit an old conversation in your mind. Something someone said weeks ago suddenly makes sense in a different way. You may realize you misunderstood a tone, or reacted too quickly, or assumed something that wasn't fully true. This isn't self-criticism. It's refinement. Mercury retrograde, beginning on February 26th, creates a very specific energetic theme: chaos on the surface, clarity underneath. The chaos isn't destructive. It's diagnostic. It shows you where your communication habits need adjusting, where your timing needs patience, where your listening needs depth. You may notice people around you becoming reactive, short-tempered, overly sensitive, or strangely withdrawn. Remember this: when Mercury shifts direction, it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone. Some people will rush to fill the silence, others will misinterpret it. And the ones who thrive during this time are not the loudest or the fastest, they're the calmest. If tomorrow feels overwhelming, don't fight it. Observe it. When a message feels unclear, reread it. When you feel triggered, pause before responding. When plans shift unexpectedly, ask yourself what this redirection is protecting you from. Because here's the hidden gift of February 26th. Communication breakthroughs don't come from speaking more. They come from understanding more. This retrograde invites you to rethink how you express yourself. Are you speaking to be understood, or speaking to be right? Are you listening to reply, or listening to truly hear? Mercury retrograde begins by exposing where ego sneaks into conversation, where assumptions replace clarity, where speed replaces precision. And you may feel that personally. Perhaps there's someone you haven't responded to, a message sitting unread, a truth you've avoided saying. Retrograde energy loves unfinished sentences. It brings them back to the surface, not to shame you, but to complete them. Tomorrow, February 26th, may reopen a door you thought was closed. A past idea resurfaces. An old opportunity calls back. An unresolved tension asks to be addressed properly this time. This is not regression, it's revision. Revision is powerful. Writers don't publish first drafts. Architects don't build without blueprints. And your life is no different. Mercury retrograde is the editing phase. It asks, is this really what you meant? Is this aligned with who you're becoming? You may feel slower than usual. That's intentional. Speed loses its magic during retrograde. Quick decisions feel hollow. Rushed conversations feel off. That dopamine rush of crossing things off your list, it won't hit the same. Because this period is not about doing more, it's about doing accurately. There's a big difference. Chaos might show up in small ways. A delayed response, a mispronounced word, a forgotten password, a schedule shift. And while these things seem minor, they're reminders to double-check your foundations, to be intentional, to stay aware. Clarity, however, will show up quietly. You'll suddenly realize what conversation you no longer need to continue. You'll understand why a misunderstanding happened. You'll see patterns in your own communication that you couldn't see before. And that awareness? That's the breakthrough. Mercury retrograde doesn't punish, it recalibrates. And February 26th is the pivot point. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe for daily cosmic insights, astrology updates, and spiritual guidance, because the universe always has a message for you. The first day sets the tone. If you react impulsively, the retrograde may feel chaotic. If you observe patiently, it may feel transformative, because the energy responds to your approach. When something goes wrong tomorrow, ask yourself, is this a setback or is this a correction? Corrections don't feel comfortable at first, but they prevent bigger misalignments later. Think of it like adjusting your path by 1 degree now, instead of realizing months later that you've drifted miles away from where you intended to be. Communication breakthroughs are ahead, but they won't look like dramatic confrontations. They'll look like subtle realizations, like choosing not to argue, like clarifying instead of assuming, like saying, "Let me think about that," instead of reacting immediately. That's power. And the people who benefit most from this retrograde are the ones who stay emotionally neutral, who don't assign permanent meaning to temporary confusion, who understand that mental fog is sometimes the mind reorganizing itself. If tomorrow feels like chaos, remember this: clarity is assembling behind the scenes. If conversations feel tense, remember this: understanding is forming underneath the friction. If plans fall through, remember this: redirection is protection in disguise. February 26th is not here to disrupt your life. It's here to refine it. So, move differently tomorrow. Speak slower. Listen deeper. Double-check details. Let people finish their sentences. Reread before sending. Think before promising. Pause before reacting. That single shift, from reaction to reflection, is where the breakthrough lives. Because Mercury retrograde is not about what goes wrong, it's about what finally becomes clear. And once the initial wave passes, you'll notice something surprising. The noise quiets, the mental clutter settles, and what remains is precision. You'll know exactly what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Tomorrow may begin with chaos, but it ends with awareness. So as February 26th arrives, don't brace yourself in fear. Step into it with intention. Let the misunderstandings teach you patience. Let the delays teach you timing. Let the mental fog teach you discernment. And if something resurfaces from your past, a conversation, a person, a thought, ask yourself whether it's asking for closure or completion. There is a difference. Closure ends something. Completion evolves it. This Mercury retrograde begins not to confuse you, but to align you, not to block your communication, but to refine it. Not to slow your progress, but to correct your direction. Chaos is the surface. Clarity is the depth. And the breakthrough? That's the reward for staying calm while everyone else panics. So when tomorrow feels heavy, don't assume the worst. Assume recalibration. Assume refinement. Assume that something important is being adjusted in your favor. Because by the time this retrograde unfolds fully, you may look back at February 26th and realize it wasn't the beginning of confusion. It was the beginning of understanding. And that changes everything. As Mercury retrograde unfolds beyond the first shockwave of February 26th, something deeper begins to surface. The chaos that felt loud on day one starts revealing patterns. And patterns are where the real power lives. You may start noticing repetition, the same type of misunderstanding, the same kind of delay, the same emotional trigger resurfacing in a different form. That's not coincidence. Retrograde energy loops intentionally. It brings unfinished cycles back into view until you recognize them clearly. Maybe it's not about the delayed email. Maybe it's about your impatience with waiting. Maybe it's not about the argument. Maybe it's about your need to be understood without first understanding others. Retrograde doesn't just test communication. It tests interpretation. And here's where clarity deepens. During this period, you might feel drawn to revisit old messages, old journals, old conversations. Words you once skimmed over suddenly carry weight. Meanings shift. You start reading between the lines, not just in other people's sentences, but in your own behavior. There is something humbling about realizing you didn't have the full picture before. But humility during Mercury retrograde is not weakness. It's evolution. Because when communication slows down, awareness speeds up. You begin to notice tone more than words, energy more than explanations, intention more than surface details. And this is where the breakthrough begins. Not in grand declarations, but in subtle recalibrations of perception. If someone misunderstands you during this time, resist the urge to defend instantly. Clarify calmly. If you misunderstand someone else, own it quickly. The ego wants to win conversations. The soul wants to improve them. Retrograde energy favors the soul. And while the external world may feel slightly unstable, internally you are being invited to strengthen something powerful. Discernment. Discernment is different from suspicion. It's not about assuming the worst. It's about sensing what aligns and what doesn't. Mercury retrograde heightens that sensitivity. You might suddenly feel that certain conversations drain you faster, that certain environments feel louder than usual, that certain commitments feel misaligned. That's not random. Your perception is refining. And here's something important. Technology glitches, travel delays, and scheduling issues often mirror where you've been mentally rushing. If something gets postponed, ask yourself, was I moving too fast to begin with? Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the miscommunication is exposure. Sometimes the confusion is revealing a truth you were too distracted to see. And if you lean into patience instead of panic, the retrograde begins working for you instead of against you. Because this isn't about surviving chaos, it's about learning from it. The people who grow the most during this time are the ones who stop trying to control every outcome and start observing every signal. And the signals are everywhere. A sentence you almost didn't hear, a reaction you almost didn't notice, a detail you almost ignored. Nothing is louder than awareness when it sharpens. By the middle of Mercury retrograde, the energy becomes less shocking and more revealing. The fog doesn't disappear, it becomes navigable. And this is where something profound happens. You begin to question not just what you're saying, but why you're saying it. Are you speaking out of habit, out of fear, out of validation, or out of clarity? Retrograde energy strips communication down to its core intention. If you've been over-explaining yourself, you may feel exhausted doing so now. If you've been avoiding hard conversations, they may gently resurface. If you've been saying yes when you meant no, that tension will become harder to ignore. This is the breakthrough phase, because clarity isn't just about understanding others, it's about understanding yourself. And here's something most people overlook. Silence during Mercury retrograde is powerful. Pauses become sacred. Space between responses becomes meaningful. You don't have to fill every gap. You don't have to resolve every misunderstanding immediately. Sometimes clarity needs breathing room. You may also find yourself reflecting on past decisions, not with regret, but with curiosity. Why did I choose that? What was I thinking then? What would I choose now? That shift in perspective is growth. Retrograde energy pulls your attention backward, not to trap you in the past, but to give you a new angle on it. When you see old situations with new awareness, you reclaim power you didn't know you left behind. And this is where communication breakthroughs truly ignite, not in arguments won, but in patterns broken. You might choose not to engage in drama that once pulled you in. You might choose clarity over cleverness. You might choose listening over reacting. And suddenly, something that once felt chaotic becomes strategic. Because the slowdown has trained you, you've learned to double-check, to pause, to interpret carefully, to question assumptions, to value precision over speed. That's not chaos. That's mastery.